Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bella Gamer, and today we're going to be talking about probably one of the most broken multi-class archetype dedications to date. Or is it? I don't know, actually. To be honest, I think it is... It's a little bit of both, honestly. It's very strong and yet unremarkable at the same time. So today we're talking about the Exemplar. And let me get my spiel out of the way first. Paizo sent me the book. This is not sponsored content, so I'm just going to give you my straight thoughts. They're not paying for this content. All right, good, done, solid. So, Exemplar dedication. I just want to talk about this. All right. So the dedication itself has one very interesting thing, something that I've been calling out for forever, even though people have been arguing with me. So first of all, you'll notice that this requires only +2 strength or +2 dex, not both. That is something I've been just asking for martials. I don't understand why people think that it's okay for spellcasters to only give you or to only require one stat boost and not two, like the marshals. I think they all should be one. I think, like, if a monk is not required to have both of their stats at +2, I don't know why someone doing the dedication would have to do that. That just seems really weird. So with the Exemplar, we got one or the other, and I think that's completely fine and the way it should be. Is this a move for Paizo to advance us to a state where we don't need this anymore? I don't know. We just got done with the player core, and so it seems... This is the weird thing, and like, I understand from the Paizo developer standpoint. They designed these books months and months, maybe even almost a year in advance, with some things like needing to be worked up on and editorial stuff, you know. So there's a lot of times where they work on a project and then they start working on another project and they update like their views of the game, change their ethics, whatever. And so we start seeing things. And with the Exemplar, this is a good change, I think, personally. I don't feel like a double stat boost is really worth what you're giving a martial more often than not. People argue about that, but we have here the Exemplar. And there is an errata. This is going to be a rare multi-class archetype. That's already been mentioned before. It makes sense. The class itself is rare, so, you know, I don't know why it wouldn't be. Not the biggest thing, but honestly, I think this needs bigger errata. And that's because when you pick up this dedication, you become trained in both martial weapons, and you gain an icon, just one of their icons, and you can use both their eminence ability and their transcendence, and you get the shift eminence ability so that, you know, when you use its transcendent ability, it kind of goes back into your body and you got to use an action to like recharge it essentially. But this is actually dumb for one reason, and it would take one simple change to make this much better. But first, let's talk about why it's broken, or at least broken is such a hard word to use because it's not really broken, honestly. Time and time again, the actual developers of Paizo have gone on Twitter to state that doing more damage is not necessarily making encounter design or like getting through encounters better. More damage oftentimes leads to over damage that makes a lot of that damage go to waste. And in addition to that, more damage doesn't mean dealing with different types of enemies and or scenarios. Also, combat is only one pillar of the gameplay. Sure, maybe your campaigns are more combat focused, or maybe combat's the only thing you care about, but that doesn't mean that the product as a whole isn't designed for there to be story elements, social encounters, roleplay moments, and combat. You know what I mean? So more damage isn't necessarily better. Is it good? Yeah, sure. I agree. Mechanically speaking, more damage is just a good thing. It can make a creature die faster. So why I'm bringing this up is example number A. I understand it's not a number. It's a joke. This is the Gleaming Blade icon, and you can get it in all of its glory right when you select this dedication. As long as you're using a sword or knife or an unarmed strike that uses either slashing or piercing damage, you can get the Gleaming Blade. Sorry, just slashing damage. It doesn't matter, but people always get so butthurt when I like skip over a thing or I misstate a thing. That's not even the point of what I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm real riled up about this one. So Gleaming Blade, right? Why are people selecting this icon more than anything else? Well, it's probably the +2 spirit damage, like additional spirit damage. That's really strong. That's very, very strong. And it's not just +2 additional spirit damage, it's +2 additional spirit damage per weapon damage die. So at level 3, when, typically you get your first striking rune, you will be doing +4 extra damage. That's more extra damage than a barbarian is typically, or that's the same or more, depending on the type of barbarian you play, extra damage you're doing with your melee strikes as a barbarian. That's their whole thing, right? But that's actually not why I'm necessarily upset. So that's fine. I think that's okay. Having a bard on your team technically is better than this icon. Now, having both is way better than that because this is additional damage. This is like not a type of bonus. It's just straight up a bonus of damage you can have stacked with any other like status bonuses for damage. So that's nuts. But that's the least of my concerns. Extra damage, sure, whatever. Like I said, more often than I actually ran the numbers like a level 5 fighter against a troll, a forest troll, 125 HP. Took the fighter, no, seven attacks to get the troll down on average, versus without this icon taking 9 attacks. So 2 attack difference, that's pretty good. Way less good when you consider that oftentimes whatever you're fighting, your teammates are fighting with you. And so you're getting less attacks. And if you over damage, or if your ally over damages the enemy, whatever extra damage you do usually is wasted. Like extra damage on kill is efficiency loss. Whatever. Okay. That doesn't matter to people. People don't care about that. They don't care about efficiency loss. They just want to see big numbers. They want to see big crits. I get that. That's fun. That's why I really don't have a problem with it. Like I said, having a bard on your team actually gives you more damage because not only do you get a +1 status bonus to your damage, but also to your attack rolls. That increase in accuracy will typically be more than a singular point of damage. So having just a bard on your team is really good. Granted, you can't take a bard as a skill feat, so this is the next best option. But I actually don't have a problem with the bonus damage. And for all the people who do, whatever. Our games may be different. It might mean more in your games than it does in my games. But with my games, I at least try to have very diverse encounters where, it's not just white room combat where you're running up and hitting enemies until one of you dies. Like, you have to worry about ranged enemies. You have to worry about terrain. You have to worry about a lot of things that straight up damage numbers really just can't beat. Again, none of this is my problem. I'm addressing it because this is a lot of what I've been seeing online. No, see, the thing that I think is actually broken is the Transcendence ability. Because with Gleaming Blade, it gives you the ability to strike twice with whatever weapon you're wielding. It has to be a singular weapon. It's not like a double slice like fighter gets. This could be a 12-hit big stick weapon that will get to hit twice. Now, sure, the second attack is at -2, but honestly, that's such a huge damage get for just straight up accuracy and efficiency that it way makes up for. And you get your additional spirit damage for these strikes too. So what happens is the most efficient way to currently deal damage in the game is to take this dedication at level 2 and then run up to an enemy and use the Transcendent ability. And then next round, Shift Eminence, again, Transcendent ability, again. And that's going to be probably one of the best DPR options in the game without a question. It's just that good. It's that damage efficient. It's really, really good. But the thing is, right, that's really boring and also doesn't hold up to actual good encounter design because typically the enemies will probably die before you get another round, or maybe they'll die after your next round. and then you need to move, and then, if there's actual hazards or whatever, you might spend multiple actions moving. So, it's not that strong, but in White Room combats, it's very strong. And this is the thing, right? I say White Room combats like it's a bad thing a lot of the time, and I get that. I understand that. And the cold, harsh reality of the situation is White Room combats are super common because in a lot of people's games, the GM isn't really thinking about making a super interesting battlefield. Usually they're unprepared, or it's not anything that big, or it's like a battle like in a room or something like that, going through a standard dungeon crawl. Like a standard dungeon crawl creates a lot of White Room combats because typically the rooms you fight in are not that big. Maneuverability isn't a thing more often than not. And in many of the adventure paths, that's a very common issue, actually. So White Room combat like theories do make a lot of sense for a lot of people. It's something that is a big problem with the adventure paths and is something that I hope Paizo fixes in the future. But yeah, it's actually the transcendent ability that makes this way more strong than it should be, because it's just that extra damage efficiency boosted on with the eminence ability. Another really, really good icon I want to make special mention of is the Victor's Wreath. So the Victor's Wreath is essentially a slightly worse Bless, but you just have it on all the time. This is like a slightly worse version than a level 16 champion feat, because there's the champion's feat that gives you like Bless all the time around you without needing to activate it. Yeah, the only difference is you don't get a bonus to skill checks, but like who cares? We want the status bonus to hit people anyway. This is really strong. Too strong. For a level 2 pickup, you don't like a fighter is probably actually better taking Victor's Wreath over Gleaming Blade, if I'm going to be straight up honest. In more like well-designed combats, that's way more helpful. It also applies to your allies as well. So the damage boost is actually multiplicative based on the number of allies around you, which is really good. So these are two of just a couple examples. And the most egregious, a lot of the other icons are kind of not as bad. So I mentioned earlier one fix to fix this whole situation. Remove the eminence ability, period. Make it so if they want the eminence ability, at least make it like a level 8 feat or something like that, level 10 feat. Maybe even level 12, honestly, with how strong some of these abilities are. Like a level 12 feat for that one icon ability, the Victor's Wreath, is, I think, appropriate. Gleaming Blade could be sooner, if I'm going to be honest. It's just damage efficiency, which later game actually becomes less important because enemies have better ways of just not getting straight up flogged by your team. They either fly, can cast spells, or do all kinds of other things. So if you just remove the eminence ability or make it a later feat, that would work. The transcendent ability is really good, and for Gleaming Blade, as I mentioned before, it's absurdly good, but you wouldn't be getting the status bonus, the extra spirit status bonus on top of it. You would just be using the 2 strikes, which is still strong, but not as strong. And because of the extra action to reload it, I feel like that's way more fair if I'm being serious. So if you remove the eminence ability, that's really good. And then there are several feats that you could select that give you an eminence and transcendence ability you can use with your icon. And I think that's a good way to like divvy out the power and not necessarily take away something that's really interesting from the Exemplar itself. In fact, it's so bizarre that the Exemplar is giving away something so precious to their kit right in their dedication. I don't know who designed this particular dedication feat. They did not think ahead, and there's some very obvious problems with that. I love Paizo staff. I love all the stuff they're making. And as I've already mentioned before, it's not really as problematic if you are doing good combat design, but most people aren't. The APs are very White Room combat-y because they are just rooms where enemies are and players go into and fight them in. Like, in a lot of cases, there's a lot of rooms you fight enemies in, and the intent is enemies that are in like an adjacent room come to join on the sound of combat. So you don't even have to move because an enemy is typically running up into you to do damage. So, it's I understand how actually the battle mechanics work and the teamwork elements are really good in this game, but things like Gleaming Blade are just a way the thing is, it's way stronger than it should be for a feat of its level. I've spent like 15 minutes talking about just the dedication feat. That's absurd. You know what's more absurd? That's really the only thing worth talking about because the rest of the feats are really simple. Let's talk about them right now, actually. So, first of all, or I guess second of all, now, basic glory, first or second level feat, pretty simple. Then we get exemplar resilience, a pretty standard one for many of the healthier martials. This gives anyone who doesn't already have a class who has more than 8 plus con 3 additional HP per additional exemplar feat that you select. Okay, it's never been a good feat in my opinion because it scales terribly. If I was to have a feat like this, I would just make it like tough where you just get an additional hit point as long as you're not at the, like the same hit point rank. For this one, if you're 8 plus or below, get 1 per level. I think that would be better, honestly, and more worth the feat choice. Then we have advanced glory. We get half any advanced feat that is either half our level or below, standard issue for most classes. Then we have exemplar expertise. Our exemplar class DC increases to expert. Ooh. And then second icon, which gives you another icon. And when you spark transcendence, now you can swap between the two, making our whatever our character even stronger. Honestly, if you picked both Gleaming Blade and Victor's Wreath, then you're always doing like a good amount of extra damage. It's just a really good combo, and I don't know why you would not choose that. And the fact that you get 2 fully functioning icons is so insane to me because literally the class itself gets only 3, maybe 4, maybe 4 if you select the feat for it. And sure, yeah, like Exemplar gets it earlier, but like, so what? Level 12, that doesn't matter anymore. So like the one icon difference, and especially because I think when it comes to Exemplar, one of the best ways to play, honestly, is to bounce between 2 of your favorite icons and have a third icon for like more situational stuff is probably the best. You're going to be playing about the same as an Exemplar. Now, so my one solution would be remove the Eminence ability. Victor's Wreath would no longer be good, and Gleaming Blade would still be good, but not nearly as good. And some of the other icons actually would have a little bit more value because they can give you a good ability that you can pop when you need it, like Skin Hard as Horn. So that would be my fix, honestly. And I think that would be the best way. And then you can even still pick up some of the Eminence abilities if you go through their feats. And many of those that you pick up through class feats are not nearly as good as Gleaming Blade anyway. So, and you have to select extra feats for it. It gives you an extra cost. I feel like that would be fair. So, Paizo, if you're listening to this, please, please, please just errata it so that the exemplars icons that are gains through this do not gain the eminence abilities. And I think we're good to go. I think that would be fine. But I do want to address one more bit of one more hot take here. I don't mean because a hot take. I think it's a pretty reasonable take, but I don't like the idea of people thinking that just because you can get such a powerful ability from like multi-class archetype dedication that somehow that invalidates playing the class. So there's been a lot of people saying, oh, fighter can just pick up this and be a better exemplar. No, you ain't. No, you aren't. You aren't a better exemplar. What is your criteria for that? Is your criteria for that you just have better DPR in White Room combat scenarios than a exemplar? Cool. I mean, so what? Again, in good combats, damage doesn't mean anything, and oftentimes you're over damaging enemies, which is losing damage that meaning you didn't need as much extra damage. But more than that, more than anything, people play classes to play different play styles, to play things that offer different things. And also, there's just many feats that these classes get that are just better at some things than like a fighter is. One of fighter's worst aspects is how terrible it is in anything other than combat, and how terrible it is in combats that have too many like extra things in it. You got a combat that has multiple levels, that climbing or jumping is involved in a lot of that kind of stuff. Fighters struggle really hard. They need to pick outside solutions to get through all that kind of stuff. And if you're fighting an encounter that you're just taking damage, like you can't do anything about it, or it's save based or whatever, a fighter is just going to get melted by it because, yeah, sure, they have decent health, but they have no defenses against that kind of stuff. And it's a team based game. So, there's going to be multiple different types of things that need to be dealt with on the battlefield. The fighter is the best at dealing with enemies that are good for the fighter to face. And they do it really well, like the barbarian does, The Exemplar is a class that it offers a very fun mechanic because even though you get one icon when you pick up the dedication, you don't get the 3 icons. You don't get the fun of swapping between your icons, getting these different buffs, using these cool abilities. The Exemplars get the epithets that let them do cooler things, like get skill bonuses and all that kind of stuff. Like, honestly, an Exemplar is going to be better at a lot of skill checks than fighters will be in general in combat scenarios. And I'm not even going, well, I'm going to mention actually, but in that example scenario I started this video off with a fighter against a troll, that was not including its regeneration. I was just using its base stats as a punching dummy. A fighter against a cave troll is actually really bad. The fighter loses more often than not against a level 5 cave troll, or not cave troll, forest troll, because of the regeneration. So it took them 7 attacks, which was 4 rounds of combat, essentially, for the fighter to take it out, with average damage, that is. And the cave troll would have regenerated 80 HP in that time, forcing the fighter to take probably another few rounds to take it out. And the troll hits like a bus. The fighter doesn't have the best AC, especially if you're just going like a 2-handed weapon or whatever. So, it's something that, like, the fighter's still not even the best, even in a fight with a troll. An Exemplar is genuinely a better fighter if you have access to something that can do either fire or electricity damage, which, yeah, I didn't realize Paizo changed one of the trolls' turnoffs for their regeneration to electricity. That's wild to me. That's so bizarre. But yeah, just getting fire damage, which an Exemplar can do, is pretty good. Also, when it comes to like spirits and stuff like that, Exemplars are just inherently better at fighting spirits and such some fighters are. There's a lot that Exemplar can do more than a fighter, but if you're talking about generic scenarios with enemies that don't have particular types of weaknesses, then the fighter is better. Heck, against constructs, fighters are better because spirit damage doesn't typically work on them. So the spirit damage that Exemplars can do really doesn't work against those kind of enemies. There's a lot. There's a lot. And what this video mostly boils down to, one is a rant from me, just so you guys can get my thoughts. These are my true unfiltered thoughts. Take with them what you say. People are going to disagree with me anyway. And to be fair, a lot of people have a right to, because the thing is, I keep saying like well-designed combat encounters. My definition of well-designed combat encounters, dynamic, requires thinking, isn't always the same, is different than other people's definitions of encounter design. And as I said before, many of the adventure paths just have pretty bland white room combat scenarios because those maps are easier to design and because it would require way more time and effort and would be a little tedious if every fight was a lot more of a complicated affair. So, different people have different scenarios, different groups play in different ways. For some groups, this dedication is way more powerful than it would be in my games. Because in my games, like I said, straight damage isn't going to get you through the fight because the encounters have a little bit more than just running up and hitting enemies. Like, not even a lot more, but like a little bit more at the very least. So people are going to rub up against this one, and it's going to suck. If you're a GM and you think you see this and it's making you like sweat, remove imminence abilities, make it an additional level 12 feat if your players like throw too much of a fit. There you go. Honestly, I'd be happy of just removing the eminence abilities from icons from the dedication anyway. Not from exemplars, but from the dedication in general. I don't think you need it, and you could pick up feats to give you other eminence abilities anyway. So that's my impressions. I think this is a really good archetype dedication. In some games, or archetype dedication, multi-class archetype dedication, and in some games, it is going to be way more powerful than in others. There's a lot of people who don't care about damage. There's a lot of people who only care about damage because that's the only thing they can see. That's the only thing that makes their game feel real. So, you know, everyone's going to have a different opinion on this one in the end of the day. I do genuinely think that there are problems with this archetype dedication. When you compare it to other archetype dedications, when you pick... the problem is when you look at picking up a multi-class archetype dedication, especially one that is easier to select than any other martial that gives you some of the best damage boosting ability at level 2 and it scales, yeah, that's a problem. Because when you pick up any other class archetype, you get a weapon proficiency and like some skill proficiencies. That's it. That's definitely unbalanced. And just because it's rare doesn't mean players aren't going to want it, and doesn't mean that a GM is even going to be like, well, I'm not going to let you pick that, because even though I would allow you to play an exemplar, I don't want you to play a fighter with the exemplar dedication. You know, that just seems like a really unfortunate thing to do. Some GMs are okay with that, and that's okay too. But I'm just saying, like, some GMs don't want to be put in that situation. It's a mess. Removing the eminence abilities would fix that. I've said that before, and I'm kind of talking in circles now. Like I said, this video is more of a rant, but that's my honest opinion. It is genuinely strong. Victor's Wreath is genuinely strong. So, you know, this is going to be a must-take for a lot of people, and I definitely think Paizo needs to do something about it. Is it going to break the game? No. Is it going to ruin any of my games? No. But I think Paizo needs to do something about it, personally. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games, and leave the bad luck to me. I'll see y'all next time. We're talking about Animus next, by the way. So, you know, like, follow, subscribe, all that. Yeah, whatever. It's a rant video. Bye.